Hi everybody and welcome to the Mojo Sessions, your online television channel that gives you access to some of Australia's best leaders. Now you may not know some of these people, but they've got information you have to know about. We'll be talking about business and marketing and brand, things in and out of the workplace that gives their business and themselves real mojo. Our guest tonight is Tim Power. He's the managing director of a company called 3P Learning. Now, you may not have heard of 3P Learning, but I guarantee if you talk to your kids, they will know one of the brands that Tim runs, and that brand is Mathletics. Tim, great to have you here tonight. Thank you for coming along to the chapel here at St Andrews.
Thank you, Gary.
Let's start at the start. Give us a quick rundown on your history, your work career that's brought you to this day today at 3P Learning.
Okay, so I was a bit of a nerd at school. Studied law at university and was a pretty poor student in my early years.
Apart from the fact you got an honours in law.
I snuck through in the end, just. Went into law for 9 months. Actually really liked it in commercial litigation. It was fast and interesting, but wanted something really creative. So I went into educational technology and started playing with technologies and really it sort of unfolded from there. I started with video, then ways of storing and delivering digital video, and then maths for kids and connecting kids gaming-wise, the world education games, and more recently 3D technologies for kids. So it's fascinating world, kids learning.
Now you've worked a lot in leadership role, and you're really leading an amazing bunch of young creators. What's your own personal philosophy on leadership from how you see it in a digital age?
Look, I think leadership is the same in all ages. I think it's two things. I think it's good judgment, and I think it's the ability to act on that judgment. So it's for the little decisions, you can't sweat those little decisions. You can't debate them. You've got to make quick, decisive decisions for right or wrong. And hopefully, if your judgment's good, you'll make enough good ones, and you can course correct.
Yeah.
The big decisions. If I had any advice on the big decisions, is do sweat those. Take that out to your war council, your advisors, your friends, the experts that you know, and sweat those big decisions, and then act. So, so they're the two things.
So let's just talk about that. That's an interesting point. So you're thinking that a leader should have some sort of council, or you call it war council, love that term, to call upon. If you were recommending to somebody to build that war council, who are the sorts of people that you would identify to be in that council?
Okay, for me, I seek absolute experts in their field, people who really know what they're talking about. I seek and find them out, like you do, Gary.
Yeah.
So, I've got friends who are absolute specialists in niche digital video technologies, and so if I've got, those people are absolutely essential. And then people with wiser heads than me, people who have equanimity and a balanced view of the world. So leaders can be a little bit headstrong, and so it's always good to get that bounce and that reflection of what you're thinking.
I've spoken to kids about Mathletics, and for any brand or marketing person watching this, when you talk to kids about Mathletics, they absolutely love it, which is just the most, that's utopia for a marketer. But sitting behind all that, you've got this amazing bunch of young creatives and designers and your own marketing people, and you've got education, literacy people all sitting behind this. From a leadership perspective, what advice would you give to somebody who was leading a bunch of young creatives to allow them enough freedom to do what they do best, but at the same time, you've got that leadership role and responsibility? How do you manage that?
Look, I think you've got to give them something that they really believe in, that you believe in. For me, that's an easy thing because I believe in the love of learning. I don't believe in boring, utilitarian, rote learning. I believe in finding that incredible spark, that thing that makes you want to learn, that depth of learning. If you love learning something, you know it deeply, you know it truly, you can act upon it, rather than skimming across the surface of something. So for me, that's a really powerful thing to believe in. And it means rather than producing boring textbooks or boring resources, utilitarian resources, you find ways to connect to kids in ways that you wouldn't have thought of. I know, for example, there's a lot of jargon about in our particular industry, the gamification of learning. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I think it's the learnification of gaming. It's finding all those little motivators that make you want that love of learning, whether it's quest or challenge or story or all these interesting things. So, recently playing with 3D technologies and developing resources in that world, if you want to learn about physics, rather than having some boring formula presented to you, we'll have a crash test car that you can crash and test and look at the speeds and then learn about the things that apply from that. So that's a binding thing. So if a young team have something that they believe in, they coalesce around that. And, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I've made more mistakes than anyone, no doubt. Too many mistakes. But if you've got something to believe in it, you keep orient yourself around that and you keep working towards that. And I think that's very powerful.
So that's, I guess, a purpose, something that you as a leader believe in. You can recruit people around you to believe in it. Is that something you'd use in recruitment and your selection process, to find those people that share that love of learning? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's the first, when we employ people, we look for sort of 5 specific criteria, whether it's can-do, obsessiveness. There's a little range of honesty. There's a little precise, and love of learning is the big one.
Yeah, right.
Because we know they'll get over the hurdles and the obstacles that confront them. So it's very powerful, and it's also helpful because you bring together like-minded people.
Yeah. Having known you and having known the business for a little while and watched you guys from a distance, because I love the fact that kids love Mathletics and World Maths Day is such a global success. Obviously, there's a lot of strategic thinking goes into the steps you take now and what's going to happen into the future. How do you personally define strategy?
To steal from a particularly wise marketer, insanely simple strategy, simplicity and focus. And now, I think focus is probably the biggest one of those two. You can execute complex strategies very well if you have focus. So, it's to give you an example. So one of the digital video companies that I work with has a beautiful technology which they'd been using in education, and they wanted to branch out into the corporate sector. And they skimmed across the surface, targeting corporates in all sorts of different parts of the marketplace, from big retailers all the way through to government bodies. And they spread themselves so thin that they never made any traction. They needed to burrow into one part of the market and identify precisely why they were better than the other technologies out there, and the price point, and exactly where the sweet spot was that would then escalate from there. So lack of focus is the big killer. You have focus, it's powerful.
I have to agree. I think the people that I meet who are leading organisations lack strategy, lack simplicity, where they have all these meetings to build a strategy. You can bump into the street 7 days later and they can't even tell you what it was. They've got to go back to their notes. So it isn't insanely simple. The other thing is they don't share it with their people. And the third thing is they don't think about who the competitors are.
Look,
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, for me, there's nothing better than picking a competitor out there who thinks they're top of the pile, and galvanising a team around about what we do is so much better and what we're going to build is so much better.
Or different, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good. We're going to change the pace, because the idea of the Mojo sessions is to get a little insight into your business mojo and your personal mojo. So I did some research and I found out that your favourite movie is Breaker Morant, a great Australian film. I'm going to show a little clip from Breaker Morant, which I know is one of your favourite little clips. We're going to watch the clip, and then I'm going to get you to talk to us about what it is that makes this clip really resonate with you. Breaker Morant.
It really ain't the place nor time to reel off rhyming diction. But yet we'll write a final rhyme while waiting crucifixion. For we bequeath a parting tip of sound advice for such men who come across in transport ships to polish off the Dutchmen. If you encounter any Boers, you really must not loot 'em. And if you wish to leave these shores, for pity's sake, don't shoot 'em. Let's toss a bumper down our throat before we pass to heaven and toast the trim-set petticoat we leave behind in Devon.
Shoot straight, you bastards! Don't make a mess of it!
Such a powerful scene. Why is that one of your favourite pieces of film?
For lots of reasons. Two big ones. The first one was just that defiance of authority. And not any authority, just pointless bureaucratic authority. The laws of those military tribunals were absolutely ridiculous, and it was a pointless exercise. And you know, as a nerd at school who was pretty compliant with the rules, it sort of opened my eyes to not being rule bound. And not wanting to not to acquiesce to what was the norm if I didn't think it was good enough. So that was pretty important. The other one was just something about Australia. It was the second of the Boer Wars. It was right at the time of moving from the 19th to the 20th century when Australia was federating. We were growing in confidence, wanted to be our own people, have our own laws, have our own nation, and it's taken Australia a long time to have that confidence, to feel its place in the world, and that's a very motivating thing. Gary, as you know, I went overseas with my family to take athletics and click through one of the other technologies I was doing to the United Kingdom and then to other countries, and I was struck by how few Australian brands exist on the global stage. Outside mining, they don't exist. And you realise what a small blot in the entire world that Australia is. And so, you know, those motivators to produce great stuff here and to take it to the world, I think is very important. So there's a lot that resonated for me in that. Yeah, I loved it.
Now I know in your spare time you're also the chairman of an organisation which is relatively new, the last couple of years, called Coraggio. Can you give us a quick snapshot of what Coraggio is? Because I suspect you call upon a lot of these thoughts of creating a new brand from nothing, defying some of the rules, breaking some of the rules to form into Coraggio. What specifically is it?
Coraggio is a community of outstanding leaders. We come together and meet on the same day as a group every month. Each of the groups break off into groups of 15 people, and we analyses each other's strategies and the big things, the things that you want to sweat. And the reason it's Coraggio is, you know, one of our founders has an Italian background, and it's about courage, because you can have good judgment, but the courage to act upon that judgment, sometimes you need that counsel to help you make that leap, you know. And so, you know, great leadership needs that. And you know, I love the Coraggio group I'm in. I love the network, you know, and the things I learn, and it's a very supportive, and you know, it helps you innovate and do the things that you need to do.
And it sounds like it's part of your war room, to form as part of the war room, because you've got members around you who are challenging you and holding you to accountability on.
They challenge you to the extreme. They really push your thinking. They don't let you off the hook. They don't let you mask the issues. They don't let them fester. And you know, sometimes, you know, you don't face up to the brutal realities of things. We all do it. And they're there to make you face up to those things and to act upon that. Some meetings I find, you know, I walk out and I've completely reevaluated how I viewed the world.
Yeah.
And that is a very, you know, that's a gift to have that. It
must be good for your creative mojo, no doubt. What other things do you do away from work to sort of fuel? Where you know, you're in such a dynamic education, children, technology, business leadership. How do you keep your own creative mojo topped up?
Look, I am a voracious reader of all manner of things. I love nerdy magazines like Maximum PC, you know, which take a are a bit of a piss take on technology, but a very, very clever one.
Yeah.
I read widely on all manner of things, obsessively, late at night. Even late at night, I spend time with my kids playing around with some of the things that they like on the internet or the technologies that they play with, to see their reactions, and fascinating to learn from what they're doing. So,
now I know that one of your chosen books that you admire, author Malcolm Gladwell, did a book called The Tipping Point. What was something you took from The Tipping Point that really resonated with you, and you know, what is it that triggered you that made that a favourite book of yours?
Look, it was, if anyone who's read it, there's so much interesting material in that book, as with all of Malcolm Gladwell's books. I think he's an outstanding thinker. And people are critical of him. A lot of people criticise him for the book because they say, well, it's not the blueprint for a tipping point.
Yeah.
But at the time, about halfway through, there's a fantastic chapter called The Law of Few.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really honing in on what he thought was an essential precondition for viral take-up, or that tipping point, with finding three particular types of people. And there were the connectors, who know a lot of people, the mavens, who are fantastic info specialists who can simplify the world and then communicate that out to people, and then the noisy salespeople. And those, so essentially those key viral people who are going to make something take off. And he uses an example on, I think it's, he uses moccasins as an example. I think for at least a decade, maybe a couple of decades, they've been bumping along with about 1% category market share, and really going nowhere. And they worked out a strategy of putting moccasins on a couple of those connectors, getting them photographed outside a swanky jazz bar in New York, and it exploded. And it's a strategy that reading through, I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I went out of my way then in our sales strategies to find the noisy salespeople and find the connectors. Yeah, have a pair of moccasins. And actually, I've never tried that. I should have.
Yeah, take that. Something can happen.
It's amazing how powerful that strategy is. You look at the outliers on YouTube. They're all hit a connector.
And it's even more prevalent today than it probably was back when he actually wrote the book, with how
the network effects of the
things
online
going
digital
viral,
environment.
the right people getting a hold of it, they tweet it, and off it goes.
There you go. So exactly. So for any decent viral marketing strategy is find those three sets of people, make them believers in what you do, or present what you've done for them to become believers, and use that as a springboard. And for me, to read a book, to take something so practical and so insightful, and then to use it and put it into action and see it work, that's love of learning.
Absolutely.
And he's brilliant. He gives it. I mean, he is a classic. He's a maven. He with meticulous research puts that information out there for consumption. And for those who criticise him for that book, I think they miss the point, because he found a blueprint, not the blueprint, for a tipping point.
But part of it is, I guess, from an author's perspective, is that there'll always be the people who aren't the believers.
Yeah.
But that's part of the process. It
part
also
of the
means
conversation.
Absolutely. And if he's got them thinking, even disagree, then it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring this to a close. Before we finish, where do you draw? You've had an amazing career, even though you call yourself a nerd.
I haven't.
I know you're anything but World Maths Day, mathematics is just a beautiful, fantastic tool. The things you've done in the business, you study, your gorgeous family, where do you take inspiration from? What keeps you, where do you go when you need that?
Look, one of the, music is very important in our household. What I would say is who I would say is the great Australian poet, and I don't think I'm saying anything original here, Paul Kelly. I find him incredibly inspiring artistically, and for me, he set out to tell stories.
Yeah.
And to tell stories through song, and the way his turn of phrase is just, it's poetry. It's beautiful and it resonates, and even simple things. He's I think when he described Donald Bradman, I think his turn of phrase was his feet, they used to sparkle, but they never left the ground.
Yeah.
So, such a beautiful image.
And also a nice understanding of cricket.
Oh, he does, yeah. So, that's pretty nice for me. I love poetry, and his music is outstanding, so yeah.
So from your work at Coraggio, which is a group of outstanding leaders, you're working with some great people who are building platforms for education for children. From all you've taken so far up until this point here in the chapel tonight, if there was one piece of advice that you would pass on either to a younger Tim, back when you were studying law, before you started
There's too many things,
this
I'm
commercial,
sorry. I don't know
if
where
there
I'd
was
start.
one thing you'd pass on, what would it be?
Make decisions. Don't let things fester.
Yeah.
And keep making decisions. Go for it. So it's if you don't make those decisions, the decision is taken out of your hands.
Yeah.
So and you're going to make a lot of wrong ones. Just keep course correcting. So keep making those decisions. Judgment. Act.
Well, we hope that you keep making good decisions, because I read...
Less terrible ones.
I read just recently that maths was one of the best indicators of a child's potential to do great things into the future, one of the two indicators. So I think any product or brand that's doing good things to make kids better is a great thing, mate. Congratulations to you. World Maths Day is a wonderful, wonderful initiative. Thanks for being on the Mojo sessions. We really appreciate your time. Folks, that's it for this week's episode. We'll be back next week with some more outstanding leaders for you. In the meantime, I hope we've given you a bit of mojo.